If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. Isaac Newton, 1675. A great way to learn is to explain. Richard Feynman. Success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. If you love what you're doing, you will be successful. Albert Schweitzer. Hi, I'm Frank Speidel, a retired emergency physician and recovering hospital administrator, and welcome to the Doctor's Inn. The program is not to practice medicine or to provide medical advice. With the help of our guests, we hope to provoke respectful, informed discussions of healthcare to the benefit of our community. On my last show, I was honored to have as my guest Dr. Dennis Berman, my classmate from Temple School of Medicine, and more significantly, the medical director of the Abramson Cancer Center at Chester County. Dr. Berman, as you may remember, brought world-class cancer care to a community hospital and was there for his colleagues and patients for more than 40 years. In our last show, Dr. Berman wonderfully discussed the care of cancer patients. But he also kindly explained there is a more significant issue, the prevention of disease and the maintenance and optimization of health. Yes, there is a duty to know how to treat a gunshot wound to the chest. But there's also a duty to know how to prevent the gunshot wounds to the chest. Dr. Berman, welcome back to the Doctor's Inn. And what did I get wrong?
Oh, I think you got it all right, Frank. Thank you so much for having me.
I noticed we have been talking about diseases and managing diseases in the last show. What differentiate between disease management and healthcare management?
So most of what I did my whole career was waiting for people to have a disease, cancer, and then coming to see me and trying to fix that problem. There's a famous quote that I like by Gandhi where they were focusing in India on trying to get all the bodies that had fallen into the Ganges River out of the river. And Gandhi finally one day said to the people that he was working with, I think we ought to find out why they're all falling in, which I think speaks to my concept of health care as opposed to disease care. We spend a lot of time and money in the United States treating people with diseases when in fact we know quite a bit and we don't spend very much or spend much time or resources trying to prevent those diseases from happening. And so that's the concept of what I'd like to discuss with you today.
I suspect for someone like me, this would be a lifestyle modification. Looking at things like, what would the lifestyle modifications you think we should encourage people to do? Exercise, sleep, what are they?
So I think a lot of people want to fix. They want a pill or a needle or a shot or Wegovy to fix their health. But really, most of it are things that we can do ourselves. And they're so rewarding, not just in terms of improving your health, but improving your mental outlook, knowing that you're taking good care of yourself and your family. So the first one that I think is worth thinking about is diet. So much of the American diet is based on prepared, processed foods. And in fact, I see less and less people actually knowing how to cook and prepare foods. Our human bodies developed to eat unprocessed foods, things that we foraged and picked up off the ground or in trees. And we weren't really evolved to eat candy and cake and fast food. So the interesting thing is, why are those things bad for you? And how do they factor into our unhealthiness? And one thing that happens with processed foods is they're already processed. So our bodies digest them very quickly. And the sugars and carbohydrates in those foods get quickly absorbed into the bloodstream. A really interesting thing about eating is for many years in practice, I had patients coming to me who were very heavy saying, "Doc, I'm almost not eating anything. And I would look at them like, come on, you got to be eating something. But what we've come to learn is that gaining weight a little bit is like saving money. We all make a certain amount of money and we save a certain amount of money, and that decision is based on our own personal, decisions that we make in our financial lives. But with food, what happens is what gets saved and what gets spent is dependent on the hormone insulin. And when one eats food that raises your blood sugar very quickly, a lot of insulin gets secreted, and the message to your body is, store it. And so there are people that are eating modest amounts of foods, the wrong foods, who develop high insulin levels, whose bodies store every bit of energy that they put in it, and they're tired because they don't have any energy to spend. There's an easy way now to learn about that, and that is we've developed these very cute devices that you can fit onto the back of your arm called continuous glucose monitors. They were mainly in the United States under prescription, but now there's actually one that's made that you can buy just over the counter. They're not cheap. They're about $50 for a device that lasts about 2 weeks. And the one that it's over the counter sells in a 2-pack, so it's about $100, and it gives you a month. And what's great about those things is if you wear one, you get a minute-to-minute insight as to what you ate and what it did to your body. You get to see what your blood sugar did after eating a piece of bread or a bowl of rice or watermelon. And it's incredibly educational to see that and does modify behavior.
Yes, I can appreciate, yes.
I was really surprised how certain things that I considered healthy were, for me, not that healthy. And of course, all of us are wired somewhat differently. So what's healthy for me might be a little different for you. But in general, all the processed foods that we eat are unhealthy and contributing to the obesity and diabetes. And in addition to modifying your food, wearing one of these things would give you a window of insight into seeing, am I pre-diabetic? So many Americans don't fit into the diabetic definition, but they're well on their way to that pathway. And this concept of health care as opposed to disease care would be to try to take advantage of the opportunity of changing that process and not waiting until the person is diabetic and then saying, okay, they need insulin.
Fascinating. The lifestyle changes with the feedback of a continuous glucose monitor. This is basic. If we give feedback to people right away when they're doing something wrong, they tend to modify their behavior. It's when you have to log on to your portal to find out what your sugar was on this day, and you have no link between that. You shared this with me, and I can well appreciate this. Processed foods they sort of fit our society in some way, the values we've adopted. I've got too much to do. I can't spend time in the kitchen preparing things myself. Dennis, you're one of the best bakers I've ever seen. You and Carla put out breads that embarrass the best of bakeries.
Yeah.
When did that start?
Well, I think baking is just sort of a hobby that I've picked up. I think there was a void after mixing chemotherapy for so many years. I sort of like baking as opposed to cooking because it's very metric. You're weighing out things in grams on a scale. You're using a digital thermometer to control temperatures and time. And baking is pretty close to science, if you will, especially if you're using sourdough starter as another variable into your formula.
And doctor, you've given away your background in science because you spoke of grams and not ounces.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think the good recipes that I like reading don't talk about 2 cups or 2 tablespoons. I much prefer to have it in grams and allow myself to be very precise. With chemotherapy, which of course has a very narrow therapeutic window, it's critical to have not too much, not too little, but just right.
The Goldilocks approach.
Goldilocks approach
to medicine. What interventions do you think would be the easiest for one of our viewers to start with?
So I think if you did go out and spend the money to put on a glucose monitor, you start to learn, geez, ice cream before bed is the worst thing that I'm doing. And I don't think that trying to lose weight in the traditional way that we do it, I'm going on a diet. I don't like the word diet because it has this sort of temporary connotation to it. And what you're trying to do here is make a lifelong lifestyle change. And so the way I would like to approach that in most people is to find 1 or 2 or 3 things that are the ones that give you the worst metabolic response and say, I'm going to eliminate those. And what I found is, I think I'm pretty disciplined and so is my wife, but we found that if I buy ice cream and put it in the refrigerator, it gets eaten. So the thing you've got to do once you've identified what you want to eliminate is stop buying it.
Yes.
So.
One of the things I tried to do way back when was avoid, this is going to be a reward if I do this, this, and this. Rewarding myself with that plate of chocolate mint ice cream is probably not healthy. What about sleep?
So sleep is another one that's kind of fun. For one of the things to do is to step back and say, how many animals on the planet don't sleep? And the answer is 0. And how much time does sleep take? It takes 1/3 of your life. And when you're sleeping, as an animal at least, you're somewhat vulnerable. So why would an animal take 1/3 of its life, make itself vulnerable, unless that function was absolutely critical to the well-being of that organism? We know now that sleep, the different phases of sleep, result in certain processes in the brain that clear out the mess that accumulates there during the day. And not allowing that mess to get cleared out definitely enhances the risk of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, and other neuropsychiatric problems. So sleep is pretty critical. One of the ways that, there's lots of different ways to approach it, but one of the things that I like is to wear a device that actually measures your sleep and in the morning gives you a report card. It says, good job, bad job. The ways to try to improve sleep, which we all, I think, especially as we get older, struggle with, are to have what I like to call good sleep hygiene. And good sleep hygiene means there's a time each day that is your bedtime that you go to bed, and things start slowing down and wrapping up before that. If you play full court basketball from 8:30 to 9:30 and 10 o'clock is your sleeping time, it's not going to happen.
Good idea.
So, you've got to start wrapping it up 30, 45 minutes to an hour before your projected bedtime, and then have the same wake-up time every day. I find that I feel so much better if I follow that. And I almost always follow it, except when I travel. And then the time zone change screws that up.
Oh, yeah.
And we all know that we feel bad when we go 6 or 7 or 8 hours off of our normal time zone. And it's because of us messing up our sleep circadian rhythms.
I appreciate your comment about the fact the vital function of sleep gives us. In some ways, it's like a zero hard ground on a computer. When all else fails, reboot. It gives us a chance to clear out all the registers and buffers that information is just kind of accumulated.
It's probably a good analogy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I never thought of that till you mentioned it.
The other sleep advantages that one needs to take advantage of is I love alcohol, but as much as I love it, I notice that, especially wearing a monitor, if I drink certainly anything more than 1 glass of alcohol anytime near bed, it has a dramatically
Yes.
poor effect on my sleep.
Yes.
And so although alcohol may help you quickly fall asleep if you drink a bunch of it, it makes the rest of the quality of your sleep very bad.
Yes.
And obviously the one that most of us know is not good for you is to have caffeine before bed. So anything that has caffeinated beverages, coffee, tea, certainly caffeinated sodas should be definitely avoided after the early part of the afternoon.
Unfortunately, some of us, and I lead the pack in this, live in our 1,3-dimethylxanthine kick to start our day. But as you point out, to close your day, it's not the way to go.
I mean, I think coffee early in the morning is fine. In fact, there's a lot of studies that look and suggest that it may be of benefit. And one that I thought was pretty fascinating was that someone recently looked to see whether caffeinated coffee or decaffeinated coffee had any differences in the health benefits, and it appears both are beneficial. So it's not just the caffeine that's helping people. The caffeine may wake you up, but there is some compounds in a coffee bean that appear to be beneficial to cardiovascular health.
Wow.
So decaf is okay.
Decaf is okay. Other surprises. In doing my CME, our annual CME for medical education, I was pleasantly surprised to see that approaches to low back pain have now gotten a little bit more new age, where yoga is up there for low back pain. Everyone has low back pain. Virtually a whole population does. Most of it's undiagnosed. But yoga. My wife, Doreen, she sings the praises of yoga for her sciatica all the time.
So I hadn't planned on talking about yoga today, but I think it is a super fascinating one. I had herniated discs my entire life and on occasion had enormous discomfort trying to go to work every single day and get in and out of a car and get up and down. And I had had MRIs and I had gone to neurosurgeons who all said sort of, let's leave it alone. I want to switch after this to talk a little bit about exercise, but I've always gone to a gym multiple times a week my entire adult life. In fact, this week in Chester County, the person that had ownership in the original gym I went to, Bill Berge, passed away this past week. We lost him. Him and the other linebacker for the Eagles, Frank LeMaster, owned the gym on West Town Road that I joined when I first came to Chester County. But digressing off of that, I was lifting one day and with a bunch of people, and one of the young women that was watching me bend over and pick up weights said, "Oh, Dennis, how can you bend so badly like that?" And I said, "Well, I'm just trying to not hurt my back." And she said to me, "Well, if you'll come with me this evening, I'll fix your back." Well, of course, I had to get permission from Carla to go out with this beautiful girl in the evening to go. I didn't even know where, but it turned out she was a ballerina teaching a yoga class to ballerinas. And here I am, the only man in that class. I was pretty sure that after doing that class, I was going to be paralyzed. But much to my surprise, after having chronic back pain my whole life, I woke up the next morning with no pain. And now I think it's a well-established scientific fact published in the New England Journal that yoga, in terms of managing some, but not all, low back pain, is superior probably to surgical intervention, injections, and the other sorts of things that we do to manage those problems. So yeah, so yoga would definitely be on my list of things that one might entertain as part of a comprehensive exercise program.
Let the record reflect, we did not sit ahead of time and decide we were going to talk about the values and virtues of yoga. This was just something that...
This was just a riff.
This was definitely just a riff, and it was a great riff because my wife was right, and it makes all the difference.
But I think in terms of healthcare prevention, we should also talk about exercise. And, what is that? What do we need to do to exercise? And it's different for everybody. And it's certainly different for people who haven't exercised and people who regularly exercise. So I think the key is to find something that one enjoys. You can't be doing something, you won't do something that you don't enjoy. So I always enjoyed running, and I liked the thing of being out on a trail by myself with a set of earbuds and some music and just zoning out, and I found that to be very good for me. But I also like step aerobics classes and yoga classes. I think for most of my adult life, I encourage people to do a lot of aerobic exercise because of the known cardiovascular benefits, weight loss, caloric burn, etc. I think as I've gotten older, I've really started to appreciate more the necessity for resistance training. One thing that's a fact is that for every decade of life past 40 years of age, we lose a very significant percentage of our muscle strength and core strength. And I could notice that having grandchildren, trying to carry a 35-pound grandchild up 3 flights of stairs in Philadelphia, realizing that I would have had a much easier time of that when I was 35 than 75. I do think resistance training. So how does one structure a week of activity? I think if you just want to have the easiest activity, going for a walk 4 or 5 times a week is important. People talk about 10,000 steps a day. I'm not convinced that that's a magic number, but probably 7, 8, 9,000, somewhere in that range is a good amount of activity. And then some form of resistance training, which I think should be at least 3 times a week. If you incorporate those 2 things, some aerobic activity, could be just walking, could be running, could be something more vigorous, with some resistance training, couple that with diet and some good sleep, you're off to a very good start. And all of those things cost very little money.
For our viewers who may not be familiar, most probably are, aerobic versus anaerobic, what's the difference?
So our muscles require oxygen as a source of energy. We store a little bit of energy in our muscles that can operate without oxygen. But after you're going for several minutes, that source of energy is depleted. And after that, you're doing oxidative metabolism as our source of energy. So if you wanted to translate that, walking up the stairs, 1 flight, is not bad for you, but it's not really aerobic activity. If you go on a stair machine in the gym like my wife does and walk upstairs for 60 minutes and go up 150 or 200 flights, that is aerobic activity.
Thank you. I think that most of us out there probably are a little bit vague about the difference between aerobic and anaerobic, and that's a good explanation. How does, if we do this, if we lose weight, if we sleep regularly, will that affect high blood pressure?
So one of the things that was really interesting when I first came to Westchester, there was a group of docs that were selling something called OptiFast. And it was a liquid protein diet. And the endocrinologist in town was, spearheading this, but lots of other doctors, primary care physicians, jumped on board because it appeared to be an effective way for patients to lose weight. And one of the things that was really interesting about that is that patients that had really very bad high blood pressure, sometimes taking 2 and 3 medications, within a week of starting the OptiFast diet, and I'm not promoting that diet or any other liquid protein diet, but anything that makes you lose weight, will dramatically decrease your blood pressure. So that if you go on a diet and are losing 10, 15, 20 pounds over a short period of time, and you're on blood pressure medicines, it's very important that they be rechecked because you may need to be on a lot less medicine before you stand up and pass out.
For this New Year's coming up, I have a resolution. I don't know whether it's going to help my health, my blood pressure.
You're going to come and run with me?
In the words of E.E. Cummings, there is something.
I'm sorry if I threw you off there, Frank.
I'm thinking about maybe we could, but I can't run anymore because of my knee. One of the things that I was going to do to make things more healthy was stop talking, stop thinking about politics. Somehow I get the sense that we have reached a new level of intensity that's not good for anybody.
Right.
And perhaps I'll let you know into the new year how this is working out for me.
I think it's going to be a very difficult challenge. I have tried to watch less CNN and less Fox News, and I do think that is good for your mental health. I think we have such a bombardment of information and misinformation 24 hours a day on the internet and on TV that it is mentally fatiguing for people.
It brings passions to things that we ought to be interested in but not passionate.
Right.
Dennis, I cannot thank you enough for taking your time today to share with us and the audience what you've observed, but not just as you pointed out the difference between healthcare and disease management. I think that was great. But on behalf of the community, you've made a difference. Your presence, you're a difference maker. One could do worse than be called a difference maker, which is what you've been in your career. And for those of you, our viewers out there, be safe. And give Dr. Berman's recommendations a try for a healthy, for a better way of getting your health care as opposed to disease management. Be safe.